convinced that he was totally against business. James Madison, they thought that he was, his political opponents spread rumors about him that he was a French spy and was trying to bring in the French monarchy. You know, so they get all kinds of crazy stuff that goes on in the world of politics as individualists. But see, your calling as a follower of Jesus and as one who's made a covenant with the world to bring life and zest and healing to it is to contrast the unbridled individualism of our culture with the covenants of community. Now, interestingly enough, Warren Sussman, and yeah, you can Google him too, he's a historian, did an interesting study. You're all aware, everybody's read self-help books of one sort or another? I know you need all the help you can get, so do I read self-help books. I'm trying to be a nicer, more focused person, you know, so I read self-help books. You know, you got other things in business world. If I see one more book called Jesus CEO or Jesus with Business Principles, I'm just going to throw up right at the library bookshelf because it's just so stupid. But the self-help books, they were already present in the earliest parts of America in the 1820s and up. Interesting, in the 1800s, Civil War, post-Civil War, industrial era, 8-year-old children working 16-hour days, that era of the Industrial Revolution. The self-help books were always about developing qualities of character. And they would talk about things like being courageous, being polite, making something of yourself, being courageous. They were all individual qualities of character that were designed to function in the society of the country. Somewhere in the mid-early 20th century, the self-help books changed. And they all became individual personality self-help. So, in the early 20th century, we want to become winning personalities. We want to stand out from the crowd. We want to have these gifts that stand out and are recognizable for the sake of making, a success of ourselves. We'll talk about this in another couple of weeks in more detail. But it's very interesting, and we live now, obviously, right in the cult of personality times, right? Okay, with all the athletes and, the coverage of trials and all that. Of course, the coverage of trials and government is also low overhead for the media, just so you know. You realize that that's part of the reason they do that stuff. Costs less money than to have a real TV show. But anyhow, footnote. So, what happens in every culture in history, there becomes changes in which the individual becomes prominent, the community becomes prominent, but always what Paul was talking about in the congregation in Galatia is that God has planted colonies of covenant in every nation, everywhere. And that the colonies of a covenant have to do with you and I. And that what we're called to be and to do is to understand that the whole creation breathes and is a symbol of the presence of God. Now, let me bring this up to you to show you how this can work for in your own thinking. By the way, Thomas Jefferson, you know what he said to him? He said that in the Constitution, if he had to negotiate in the Constitution for stronger laws or a free press, he would argue for a free press. Because he really believed that if people are given as much information as possible, that they can make some educated and intelligent understandings of what's going on. And in any case, what we have today, philosophically, I think you realize this, is back from the BCs. There was a Greek philosophy of technos. Now, all you all know technology, right? Okay, technos is simply doing whatever it takes, whatever means possible to accomplish the goal. The goal is not important insofar as it gets accomplished. It doesn't have to be a good goal. It doesn't have to be a healthy upbuilding goal. It just has to be a goal. The key is technos. Accomplish the task by whatever means possible. When you take a look now, and this is where I want to talk a little bit to Marcellus, the Marcellus fracking and all of that. And I want to show you two different ways to think about it. Contract and covenant. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. That will be the first thing that you own as a follower of God and a believer in Jesus, that the earth is the fullness of God and contains it. So, what becomes of that for you then is how will you handle the fracking and everything that goes with that? The upside of all of that is socially, the goal is energy, jobs, and profits. And all of those are good social goals. And they are becoming an accomplished fact. Now the question becomes then, how do you begin to relate your Christian understanding of the earth as the Lord's, and as Paul says, even the earth can be in travail and in pain and groaning? Okay, as a Christian, you use it metaphorically. Every drill that goes down there is like a knife thrust into the heart of a living creation. It is like killing or trying to bleed a part of the creation. What did Jesus call himself? The living water. What do we do with the fracking? We create dead water. And it's dead. But the goal is energy, profits, and jobs. Good social things, not to be sneered at or sneezed at. How then, as a Christian who sees the covenant of loving the world into existence, how does that then become a goal equally as worthy as jobs and profits? You see, that's where you, as a Christian, become a pain in the butt. Because if you don't ask those legitimate questions, how do we love the earth and the world into existence without destroying it? The two can be done, but it takes time, it takes focus, and it takes a proper understanding that means to an end depend on the end. And what is the end? Energy, sufficiency, independence, profits, and jobs. The question becomes, can that be done without stabbing with knife thrusts into the core of the earth? And can it be done without destroying the water table so that people can live? You see the complexities here? And you see why the Galatians decided that it would be better if they became Jewish Christians rather than Christian Christians. The Galatians, what they wanted to do was to become Jewish Christians because that provided cover for them with the governments and with the powers that be. Because Judaism at that time was a socially acceptable religion, and they would also be given a pass on worshiping the emperor and not questioning the government or the powers that be. And that's what Paul is arguing in here when he talks about the freedom of being a Christian. With that freedom comes great responsibility. And God, I know that's from some movie. I think Spider-Man quoted it of all things. With great freedom comes great responsibility. Now, Spider-Man can say it, you know. It's true. He was pretty clever. Yeah. But that is the way in which you and I, as citizens of a wonderful country, can be Christian people in a covenantal relationship where we're making promises to continue to love the world and to show it as a place in which God is present everywhere, in everything, and in everybody. asking the questions, getting the information, pushing for the change of means so that it doesn't destroy things, so that the goals which are valuable can still stay in place. It's complex and it's difficult, but it does call out for a raising of Christian voices. This is my axe to grind when all of these school boards are going back to talking about the creationism, talking about Genesis 1 as science. They miss the point. You know, no school is going to teach anything about creationism except as some kind of scientific principle which has been shown to be at best iffy. The point of that whole story is that who loves the world? God saw and he was pleased with it. And he's just tickled pink. So even on your best, worst day, he is tickled pink with you. Even on your worst day, with your worst person, he is potentially tickled pink with you. And he has a covenant of trust and faith. And your calling is to build that covenant into the life of the world. That's why St. Peter called us Christian colonies of meaning in a much larger secular world. And that's why the Galatians tried to get out of it by going back to becoming good Jews, because they didn't want any more fuss and feathers. But Paul pushed them, and thank God for them, they kept at it. But that's your gift, that's your calling, to love the world into existence, and to do that by asking all of the good, solid questions about the means and the goals. Do they bring through the love of God? And yet you can do both. You can make money, and you can love God. You can create jobs, and you can love the creation. You can make profits, and you can love the world and not destroy it. That's what you bring to your communities. The Galatians got chicken and tried to back off, but Paul didn't let them. God bless them. And that's our calling too, a gift from the earliest churches. And it's our gift of faith. We have a covenant. We made a promise. And we got to keep it. Amen.